You might have noticed a new sight in the city, horses with officers on them. This is not the first time the mounted officers have been in the city, as the chief explains.
These are pictures that we found around the department. You know, as an old, historical police department, we've been a paid police department since the 1800s, so mid-1800s, 1840, one of the oldest in the country, by the way. But this is like a roll call from, it says 1920 to 1930, so this is the 20s and 30s. That's just them going out on patrol. Now this is a patrol horse here, just happened to be a picture. It has to be from around the 40s. And these are ceremonial. These are horses and police officers that had horses or access to horses and would march in parades during the 70s, the late 70s. Even when I first got on the job, there was a couple of officers that had horses that would use their horses, and they would do parades, but that they never did not patrol. These are patrol, and this must have been, I'm assuming it's one of the corrals. Looks like the backside of Waldo Street, but they had horses that they were probably walking, and because like I said, it's a 24/7 job. You got to take care of them. Now this, if you see close enough, they're on, those two guys are police officers right here in that old picture that used to be on City Hall. It used to be at City Hall, but I somehow ended up with it. But it's horse-drawn, and there's two officers in there, so if you can see their badges in their hat.
But why bring back the mounted unit now? Well, there are some great benefits to having the unit, as the city manager explains.
Our city is growing, and we've been really focused on trying to create more activities, more events in the city, activate our streetscape. So whether it be the additional events that we're doing on the Common, we're planning 100 events this year on the Common, all of the ethnic festivals, parades, road races, the active venues that we have, whether it be the DCU or the Hanover Theater. There's just more crowds, more big concentrations of people in the city. And so the mounted units are really helpful and effective, both from a policing standpoint, but also from a PR and perception standpoint. So it's just the right time, I think, for us to restore this mounted unit. The mounted unit was here back in the 1940s, and so it will be the first return in more than 70 years.
You might ask, how long has this plan been in the works?
It's something I've wanted to do since I became chief a year ago, but as a deputy chief, I tried to push it. We tried to do something many years ago. So the process has been going on, or at least trying to move forward for 10 years or so.
A couple years ago, my captain came to me and said, "We want to start a mounted unit." I said, "Great." I didn't know how to do it. So what I did was I asked around, especially the state police and the Boston Park Rangers, found out what they did. Went down, met with them, talked about how they handled things, and then I brought it back, talked to my captain, talked to the chief about it, and what we ended up doing was deciding we were going to move forward with it.
But how will the horses be used?
Well, we haven't had one since the 1940s, so it's very exciting. It's they're ambassadors to our city, so to see mounted patrols from people coming in from the outside, to see them down in the Common or in our parks or just in our neighborhoods, it just has a different look and a different feel. It's just, horses have that tendency to calm people and to be part of the neighborhood. It's just something that I think is practical, and I just think it's just good for our city. I think it brings it to another level. If you're a business person and you're looking to open up a business downtown, and you see two officers on mount, on the Common, working patrol, I think it just sends a message that we take law enforcement, we take safety serious. And we also take our community serious. So there's two sides to that. It's practical, and like I say, they're ambassadors to our city.
The community relations aspect, I think, will be a very positive one. The other thing people don't always think about is if a horse is 8 feet off the ground and then an officer sitting on top of that horse gives the officer another 4 or 5 feet, that's a very important perspective to have. If you're in a crowd, could be hundreds, thousands of people, you to be able to see from one end of the common to the other, nobody else is going to have that perspective. So not only could you see what's going on in a different area, but everybody can see that you're there. We'll have the sense of safety for law-abiding citizens, or the sense, geez, I might not want to try something because there's an officer there and I can see that officer there, and have a deterrent effect. So I think it's going to be useful that way. As I mentioned, we've had a lot of large events. We also have occasionally had protests in the city, and the horses are particularly effective tools when dealing with crowds and crowd control and protests. They say they can do the work of 10 police officers in terms of pushing back on a crowd, and people are rightfully intimidated by a horse because kind of pushing back, and those are some of the things that the officers learn, and how to handle and maneuver the horses for some of those different maneuvers.
Some companies are so excited that they are willing to sponsor the cost of getting the program started.
There are a number of donors and sponsors who really appreciate the value that the mounted unit brings to the city of Worcester, and just all the things that are going on in the city, and want to be part of that. And they also really appreciate the Worcester Police Department and the role that they play in keeping our city safe and keeping businesses vibrant. So it was an opportunity to benefit both the police department and the community at large. Well, we're always sensitive to the taxpayer, and we want to make sure that in any ways that we can, we keep down the reliance on tax levy dollars that are very scarce and precious. So for some of the one-time expenses like the purchasing of the horse and the purchasing of the tack equipment and the startup cost to put the program online, this is where the communities really come forward. The sheriff and his facilities out in West Boylston have stepped forward. So it really limits the amount of tax dollars we need to expend in order to put this program in place.
One of those partners with the city that is excited about the newly formed unit is the Worcester County Sheriff's Department.
Well, it was really initiated by the city manager and the chief. They approached us on whether, I guess they've been thinking about a mounted unit for many years. But it's always the logistics. How are we going to pull it off? It's always budgetary. How can we afford to do this? So I guess they were thinking creatively, how can we do this? And the city manager had a lot of familiarity with our facility up here. He'd worked here previously, so he knew about the stables we had. So he reached out to us, and our immediate reaction was, well, let's take a look at it, and if we can make this work, we're more than happy to help. So it was really the city reaching out to us, and they probably had thought it through for a long time and approached us as a possibility, but we jumped right on it, and it's been nothing but let's go since day one.
What can the citizens of Worcester expect out of the newly formed mounted unit?
For a relatively small amount of money, it is going to give us a disproportionate benefit to the community. We want to support our police officers and their connectivity to the community. We've seen a lot of communities around the United States that don't have a police department that has good and close and trusting relationships with the people that they serve. And when something happens, that can be a traumatic time for a community. We want to make sure that we do what we've always done in Worcester, which is find ways to connect and bond and relate to community members and their police department that allows us to have that trust and that relationship that some communities would envy.
As Lieutenant Ash, commander of the Mounted Patrol Unit, points out, there is nothing quite as professional looking as a mounted unit.
Mounted units all look very professional. They provide a service for public relations as well as security. It was awesome to see him in New York City when I was up there, and to bring it to Worcester was great.
But some of the challenges can be tough for those officers, since an animal can sometimes have a mind of its own.
A horse is not a motorcycle or a car. A horse is a living, thinking, breathing animal, just as we are. So to get the horse and the rider on the same page takes a lot of training.
This was no easy feat, getting this program up and running. The officers went through weeks of training before they could graduate.
Accomplishment that I can't even put into words. It was a job well done, not only by me, but by my crew, who put in all the time and all the effort, at home studying, out in the barn, working with the horses, grooming them, riding them, getting them to where they needed to be. It was just it was a team effort by the state police and us.
There is more to a mounted unit officer than just being able to ride in the city on horseback.
Well, it's a full day affair for the officers. They show up here 7 a.m. every morning. First thing to do is feed the horses. That's the number one thing that is always done here. The horses come first. They feed the horses, they get them watered, they clean the stalls, they groom the horses, they put them out for a little while, and then then whatever they want to do with the horses, whether it's a sensory training or they want to go out for a ride, or if it's something as little as lunging them, they prepare the horses for that point. They have an afternoon feeding, and then they have a feeding before they go home at night. They also have to clean the tack. They have to keep the barn looking good. They have to clean the barn. They have to clean the tack room. They have to clean the grain room. It is an 8-hour day easily for these guys. They come in every single day, do their job, and do it well.
Now that the horses are up and running, where might the community find them patrolling?
Well, my vision for the mounted unit is to have 2 horses always downtown in the area around City Hall, around City Square, Union Station, the library, that area. The other 2 horses, my vision is to have them in the parks and the neighborhoods. So each day they'll be in a different park or a different neighborhood, interacting with the city and the citizens.
Officers that applied to the mounted unit had to go through a preliminary interview before they could become part of this new unit.
We had an interview process. It was a 3-step interview process. The first was an oral interview. The second was a day I took them all out in little groups of 3 or 4 out to the state police barn in Acton, had them work for the day with the troopers. And they worked in the barn, they did a little bit of riding, and we knew how to, we could assess how they were doing. And the third part of it was a little physical fitness test where I did up at Worcester State, had them do a few push-ups, a few sit-ups, a little bit of running. And at the end of that, it was very clear of the 7 officers that I wanted to have in the unit. That's how these 7 officers came to be. It was a combination of their interview, their day at the barn, which was absolutely the most important, and their day for physical fitness.
Officer Michael Dowd expresses his excitement about joining the newly formed unit.
Well, I was interested in the mounted unit for a pretty long time. About 12 years ago, the chief at the time asked Boston police to come in with their horses into the city, and they came in and they did a demonstration, and he invited the entire department, and I attended, and it really got me interested in mounted units.
He explained some of what the officers experienced going through the State Police Academy.
It was interesting. I was anticipating a hard road to learn how to ride and to get not only learn the equitation part, but also doing police work from horseback. I thought that was interesting. It was a hard road. There's a lot of time in the saddle, and a lot of getting, corrected, constructive criticism, if you will. But it was fun, and it was a great learning experience, and it was fun to learn about the horses, from everything from their diets to medical issues to riding them.
Since graduation, the mounted unit have been training with their horses and are getting ready to start patrols.
Excitement. I think it was anticipation. Looking forward to actually getting our horses. We only had 1 at the time. To get our horses and to get on the road and start doing police work with them, patrol work. I'm still really looking forward to doing that. I think it's the anticipation and the the delay. It's necessary, but we want to get out there and do our job.
The mount have specific equipment that they use while riding.
Our horses, they're trained with English saddles, English tack. It's basically just a little bit, it's a lot different than a Western saddle. A Western saddle have a big horn on the pommel. This doesn't. It's a little bit more difficult of a ride, but you become a better rider with riding in that TAC.
Officer Elizabeth Rooney talks about the excitement of being a new officer in the mounted unit.
So prior to being involved with this unit, first of all, it came as a complete shock because I never thought when I graduated just a year ago that I would be riding a horse. I heard that they were starting the unit and I said, that sounds like such a unique opportunity, so I went for it, and to my delight, I was accepted. Then it was a long road ahead. It was very interesting because I had just basically come out of a 6-month academy to become an officer, and now I was going into a 3-month academy to become a mounted officer. So it was very draining but also rewarding at the same time. In our academy, we learned so much just from the anatomy of the horse, the physicality, equitation, just so much to learn. It was almost like college. And then finally graduation came, and it was just the pinnacle of excitement and a bit of nervous energy, but just the proudness that I felt for me, for our unit, and just the fact that all the hard work and dedication that went in from the lieutenant, the captain, the chief of police, the state troopers, all the work they did to get us where we needed to be. It was just such a wonderful moment to finally graduate.
What does the future of the mounted unit look like?
Well, my hope is to see more officers be trained as mounted patrol officers. I also would like to see 2 to 4 more horses be added to the program. I would love to see 8 horses and 15 officers at some point in time involved in this program. It seems like it's only going to grow as the people see it and get behind it, and the impetus moves forward for the horses. So I think it's going to be a great thing for the city. I think it's going to be a great thing for the police department, and it's going to be excellent for public relations.
The one thing I would say is we're hoping that someday, not too distant future, up at Green Hill, on the weekends when the horses might not be working, we'll have a grazing area there so the horses could graze in Green Hill, and kids and families could come up there and see the police horses. And again, it'll just be another kind of benefit that we have activating part of our Green Hill Park.
The city manager talks about how none of this would have been possible if not for the help of the community sponsors.
A great deal of thanks to all of the sponsors, to the partners who've made this possible, Sheriff Evangelitis, the individual companies and organizations that have donated, to the folks at the police department who've been, excited, and to the officers who spent like hours and hours and hours over months training and drilling and preparing themselves to use this new tool to its fullest effect.
What can the community get out of speaking with the mounted unit officers?
As far as police community relations go, there is nothing more approachable than an officer on their mount. What the mounted patrol does is it allows people of the city to come on up, especially children, to come right up to the officer, carry on a conversation. What's the horse's name? How old is he? What does he eat? Things like that. The mounted officer also is able to interact with the citizen and leave them with a positive image of the police.